In 2029, the United States Air Force operates a space research station called Oberon, where they train chimpanzees and orangutans for dangerous exploration missions. In a mock capsule, a genetically enhanced chimp named Pericles loses control of the system and starts panicking. Fortunately, this is only a simulation, and Captain Leo Davidson calms him down with a treat. Leo returns Pericles to the lab, where another scientist shows off one of the female chimps and mentions Pericles is about to become a father. The moment is interrupted when Leo receives a video message from his friends on Earth saying they miss him. Suddenly, the lights on the station begin to flicker until they go out completely. The animals screech for several seconds, and after a few minutes, the lights return. Leo is called to the command post and learns that an electromagnetic storm is approaching the station. All digital clocks have stopped, and the system is picking up some frequency patterns. Apparently, they are all electronic communications from Earth across time, which the storm must be reflecting back. Command wants to send Pericles to investigate the storm, and Leo argues it is a waste of time, desperate to protect his friend. However, the commander reminds him that standard procedure forbids pilots without sending a monkey first to confirm it is safe. Pericles is launched in a pod and quickly enters the storm, allowing the main system to capture more readings. Leo grows worried when he notices the pod veering off course and detects a spike in Pericles' heart rate. Within seconds, they lose the pod's signal, and it disappears from radar. A scientist points out that Pericles is trained to return, but Leo panics and rushes to another pod to run some sequences. As he works, he opens a communication channel to eavesdrop on the commander's conversation and discovers they are shutting down launch operations. Leo refuses to abandon his friend, so he activates the pod and leaves the station before the others can stop him. By the time the commander realizes what is happening, he yells at Leo over the communicators, but Leo ignores him. The pod flies straight into the storm, and after some turbulence, a bright light appears. Leo spots Pericles' pod and tries to inform his crew, but the communications only emit static. Then another light flashes, and Pericles' pod vanishes into it. The light hits Leo's pod next and knocks out all its systems for a few seconds before powering them back down. He is shocked to find the pod floating outside the storm and keeps trying to contact the station without success. He tries to control the pod, but it does not respond and merely drifts aimlessly. The station crew receives a mysterious message from an old man screaming, "Help," as his station crashes. Soon, Leo's pod heads toward another bright light, and suddenly the systems start working again. To his confusion, the numbers on the clock are going haywire. Sparks shoot inside the pod as the system fails again, and it starts to descend until it crashes onto a jungle planet. The pod scrapes along the ground for miles and lands in a lake. Fortunately, it has an emergency lever that Leo pulls to eject himself. He swims out of the lake as the pod sinks to the bottom. He looks around to find a wild jungle and hears a noise that reveals Karubi and his daughter Dina, followed by a group of tribe members. They simply ignore Leo and keep running. Leo realizes the tribe members are fleeing from some armored apes, so he, terrified, decides to run too. The apes precisely lasso humans to kidnap as many as possible, even throwing small children into sacks. The chase continues for several minutes, and these apes also ride horses. Leo is hit by one of them and thrown backward. But just as he is about to be trampled by a horse, he rolls out of the way and hides in the bushes. When Dina is knocked down, Karubi distracts the apes, and they throw a net over her. Some of the humans try to fight, but the apes are stronger and easily overpower them. The group reaches the edge of a cliff with nowhere to go, so the apes capture them all and put them in a cage. General Thade arrives to supervise the operation, and Leo is shocked to hear him speak. As they retreat, they run into Colonel Adder, who kicks Leo and calls him a dirty human. The cage is dragged into the city by human slaves. All the citizens here are apes, and they insult the humans as they pass by. Leo asks where they are, but none of the humans answer. Some kids start throwing rocks at the cages, but Ari intervenes to stop them. The children call her a human lover. The cage is taken to the slave trader Limbo, who thinks these humans are not good quality, but buys them anyway. Soldiers drag the humans to the cells, and Dina and Karubi struggle to avoid being separated. But the apes are too strong, and Karubi's head is slammed against the wall. When Thade arrives, he complains about tribe members invading ape farms, and Limbo suggests hanging a human carcass as a deterrent. But Thade explains that the human rights faction will not allow it. He then buys a young human for his niece's birthday, and she is taken away on a leash. Ari watches this from afar and finds it disgusting. Afterward, Limbo and his guards begin branding the humans with a hot iron slave mark. He only manages to brand a few before Ari storms the place and knocks down the branding iron. She starts talking about human rights, and Leo takes the chance to grab the iron. When she approaches the cage to unlock it, he takes her hostage with the iron and pleads for her help. She decides to buy him and Dina, then flirts with Limbo to get a good deal. Later, Dina and Leo are delivered to Ari's house. Her father is Senator Sandar, who is not happy to see the wild humans. He tells Ari to keep them out of sight until they are domesticated. The two are forced to work in the kitchen, and Leo wonders how the apes became this way, but Dina does not understand the question. When he tries to escape, he is blocked by Krull, who sends him back to work. In the dining room, Sandar is hosting an important dinner with several distinguished military and Senate apes. Wild humans are currently outnumbering apes 4-1 and keep reproducing, so the apes need to find a way to stop them. Sterilization is mentioned, but would be extremely expensive. Ari keeps defending human rights, but whenever she tries to get her father's support, Sandar is distracted by Thade talking about self-defense. Leo pays attention to every detail as Krull instructs him on serving the meal. Before eating their prey, the apes pray to their ancient savior Samos, from whom Thade is descended. When Ari says humans also have souls, Thade knocks Leo down and looks inside his throat, ironically searching for the soul. Ari is so upset, she leaves the table. Thade follows and confesses his feelings for her, but she accuses him of only wanting her to gain her father's power. Thade furiously pushes her against the wall and reminds her he could arrest her for all the trouble she causes. He tries to leave, but some soldiers stop him, saying they have something to show him. They take him to the jungle and show him the trail of destruction left by the crashed pod, describing the fireball they saw in the sky. The soldiers swear they have not told anyone else. Thade lunges at them and kills them both quickly. In the slave cells, Leo picks the lock to escape, and Dina and Tyvel decide to go with him. They carefully sneak out and reach Limbo's house, where they free Gunnar and Burn. Gunnar is not happy to see Tyvel because the domesticated humans think they are better than the wild tribe members. But Leo stops him, and Karubi agrees to escape together. As they leave, some teenage apes spot them and screech, alerting a guard. The group starts running through several houses, scaring every ape they see. When they find the little girl in a cage, Dina rescues her too. Soon, guards are searching the city, and Leo jumps at a shadow approaching them. However, it is Ari and Krull, who quickly overpowers him. She wants to take them back because she thinks she can reason with the soldiers, but Leo convinces her to help them escape. However, the young girl would not survive such a journey, so they send her back to Ari's house. As Ari sneaks the group out of the city, Thade spots them and goes after them. Karubi tells the others to keep going and runs to fight Thade with a torch. However, Thade easily grabs him and lets Adder kill him from behind. The general orders Adder to go after the humans and kill them all, but to keep Leo alive because he wants to talk to him. Using a secret tunnel, Ari leads the group out of the city. She tries to console a crying Dina, who loses control and screeches. The humans run into the jungle, and Krull follows after ignoring Ari's warnings. He has no choice but to follow them too, unaware that someone is watching them from the shadows. Leo leads the group to the lake and tells them about his pod, but the others do not believe his story. When Leo calls them monkeys, a furious Krull attacks him and says apes are below simians on the evolutionary chain, still above humans. Leo jumps into the lake, and Krull reveals they know nothing about swimming. While looking in the pod for his bag, Dina jumps in to help him, but she gets scared when she sees two apes. However, they are just the corpses they discarded earlier. Leo swims with Dina back to the surface. He grabs his communicator from the bag and manages to get a signal from his space station, which means they must be close. Krull thinks his device is sorcery, but Leo explains it is science. Following the signal, he starts leading the group, explaining that on his planet, humans are in charge and apes are in zoos. Suddenly, Limbo attacks Gunnar, who punches him away. Byrne then lands a few hits on Limbo before calling his guards. As Byrne is pinned to the ground, Limbo prepares to kill him. Leo pulls a gun from his bag and shoots a tree to demonstrate its power, scaring the guards away. He forces Limbo to release Byrne and prepares to kill the ape. But Ari steps in and says killing an unarmed ape would lower him to their level. Limbo starts bargaining while his foot reaches for a fallen guard's spear, but Leo shoots again to stop him. When Limbo tries to flee, the group captures and handcuffs him. Krull then grabs Leo's gun and smashes it against a rock, afraid that he might use it against him. Back in the city, Thade tells Sandar that Ari was kidnapped by humans, even though he knows Ari went willingly. He demands martial law and absolute power to eliminate all humans, and Sandar agrees. Before leaving, Thade visits his elderly father Zaius and tells him about Leo. Zaius then decides to share a secret kept only in the family. There was a time when humans were the masters and apes were the slaves. He warns that more humans will come for Leo and makes him break an ancient vase, inside which is a weapon. Zaius tells him about its power and wants his son to stop the humans before they reach the forbidden area of Kalima, because it holds the secret about their true origins. He then insults all humans and dies. As the group keeps moving, Leo explains that on Earth, apes were kept in zoos because humans destroyed all the forests. He talks about space training and uses it as proof that humans are intelligent and sensitive. Days later, they reach Kalima and find some scary scarecrows. Ari explains these things are meant to keep humans away because this is the sacred land where the first ape Samos was born. Several soldiers are camped in the area, so the group waits until nightfall to move. When two apes start arguing over a card game, Thade finally arrives and yells at them, calling the camp a disgrace before taking command. At night, the group sneaks through and steals some horses. Leo fires a flare as a distraction, and while the soldiers stare at the strange light, the group rides through the camp, starting a fire. A soldier jumps on Limbo, thinking he is a traitor, so Limbo has to push him off to keep riding. Leo grabs a torch and uses it to set more tents on fire, also hitting a soldier with it. The rest of the group reaches the river and crosses it, except for Ari, who hesitates at the water. Thade furiously throws a torch at her, making her fall off her horse. When Leo blocks him with more fire, Thade throws a chain around the leg of Leo's horse, making him fall too. Soldiers keep throwing torches. Leo runs to Ari and carries her through the water. He jumps with her on his back and swims to the other side until they finally reunite with the others. When Thade discovers the humans escaped on the soldiers' horses, he goes crazy and breaks some things before marching the entire army to Kalima. By morning, the group reaches the sacred ruins, and Leo is shocked to find his crashed space station. The entire area is destroyed, and skeletons indicate this happened thousands of years ago. Fortunately, the computer is still working, and Leo watches the logs to find out what happened. He realizes he was pushed forward in time, but the station searched for him in the present and landed on this planet when it was still uninhabited. The message the crew saw earlier was from an older Leo in the future. Samos was one of the apes from the experiments. He was actually Pericles' son. He organized a mutiny and convinced the other apes to take control of the station. Most of Leo's crew is dead, and the tribe members are the descendants of the survivors, while ape society descends from the experiments. As the group exits, they find all the tribe members surrounding them, having heard the stories of the human who fights against apes. At night, Byrne explores the area and sees the ape army approaching. Leo tells the tribe members to flee, but they do not listen. Meanwhile, Ari goes to see Thade and offers herself in exchange for letting the tribe members live. However, he hates that she thinks like a human and proceeds to brand her hand with the slave mark. He then sends her back so she can die with the tribe members tomorrow. In the morning, Leo keeps checking the computer and realizes there is still plenty of power left, which gives him an idea. He convinces the other humans to hide behind the station while a small group rides ahead as bait. Soon, Thade's army arrives, and the first wave of apes attacks. The group rides back to the station as planned, but Byrne accidentally falls off his horse. Leo runs to help and gets him back just in time. He then activates the station's thrusters, and the enormous flames knock down every approaching soldier in seconds. This uses up all the remaining power. The humans come out and start beating the burned apes. Adder fears the station will fire again and wants to retreat, which was Leo's plan. However, Thade refuses to give up and orders his army to attack anyway. A brutal battle begins, and the humans fight as hard as they can, but it is clear the apes have the advantage. Gunnar is grabbed by an ape and killed with a broken neck. Dina is also nearly killed, but Ari jumps on her attacker, and they kill him together. As they run to protect each other, Dina sees Ari's branded hand and finally feels sympathy for her. Meanwhile, Krull and Adder crash into each other and wrestle on the ground. Unfortunately, Adder overpowers Krull and kills him. Thade kills every human in his path until he can confront Leo, who punches him in the face. Thade furiously grabs him by the neck and punches him before throwing him to the ground. He prepares to finish him off, but the entire battlefield freezes when an explosion is heard. A light appears in the sky and slowly descends to reveal a pod with Pericles. The ape army immediately kneels because they think Pericles is the second coming of Samos. Leo grabs Pericles' bag and asks him to make the apes see reason, but Pericles runs inside the station. When Leo tries to follow, Thade tackles him. Ari jumps on Thade, who has to push her off, giving Leo a chance to run into the station. Thade follows and kicks him to the ground before beating him again. Pericles joins the fight, but is also thrown against the wall. Leo pulls a gun from Pericles' bag and opens fire, but Thade's armor protects him, and he lunges at Leo to disarm him. The gun slides into the command booth, and Thade runs to grab it, accidentally firing in the process. Leo's friends enter the station with Adder, who is horrified at the damage Thade caused to Pericles. Adder prepares to shoot Leo but closes the booth to trap him instead, the bullets merely ricocheting around him. Thade desperately orders Adder to kill Leo, but Adder reminds him that humans brought the apes here and they could live in peace. Adder finally accepts that everything he believed is a lie and refuses to help his commander. Everyone watches as Thade and Leo fight, and Thade shoots every corner of the booth, but he finally gives up when he realizes he is not accomplishing anything. Leo checks on Pericles, who is injured but still alive. The group buries all the fallen fighters, and Ari tells them not to mark the graves. That way, nobody can tell who is human and who is ape, and everyone will be honored equally. From now on, the two groups will live in harmony. Leo leaves Pericles with Ari and checks the pod's radar, which finds the storm that brought him here. Ari begs him to stay, but he cannot, so he says goodbye and kisses her. When Leo says goodbye to Dina, she also kisses him. He finally enters the pod and begins his journey through space. He crosses the storm and, after much turbulence, finally returns to the solar system. Unfortunately, the pod loses control and Leo cannot land it properly. It ends up crashing in Washington. When he steps out, he is shocked to see Thade's face on the memorial instead of Lincoln's, and even the famous quote has been altered to mention apes. Soon, the police surround him, and they are all apes too. Thade must have stolen the other pod and traveled back in time to conquer Earth. And that is Planet of the Apes, a 2001 science fiction and suspense film. I will see you in the next video. Daughter. He tries to comfort her, but realizes she only cares about the meat. Glenn and Maggie are in the interrogation room after Glenn killed a walker. They improvise weapons from the walker remains. At the Woodbury perimeter, Rick and the rescue team planned their next move. Michonne finds an entry point. The governor tells Merle his plan to eliminate Rick Group and suggests using Daryl as an infiltrator. At the prison, Axel flirts with Beth, but Daryl warns him to stay away. Merle goes to get Glenn and Maggie, but they overpower his men and are recaptured. Rick and the team follow the gunshots to Glenn and Maggie. They use a smoke grenade to escape. On the street, the governor tells residents to stay inside and orders his men to shoot to kill. The team regroups, and Glenn tells Daryl that Merle is alive and working for the governor. Daryl wants to find Merle, but Rick insists he stays. Andrea wants to fight, but the governor sends her to check on residents. Michonne enters the governor apartment, waiting for him. The team runs toward the wall, and Andrea shoots at them without knowing who they are. Rick downs a shooter and realizes it was a Woodbury resident. They escape through the wall, but Daryl and Michonne are missing. At the prison, Carl and Herschel hear gunshots. Carl finds Tyrese Group fighting walkers and leads them to a safe place. In the governor apartment, Michonne discovers his secret room and kills Penny, his zombie daughter. The governor attacks her, they fight, and she stabs his eye. Andrea arrives as Michonne leaves. At the prison, Tyrese group is locked up by Carl. The governor speaks to Woodbury residents, accusing Merle of betrayal and presenting Daryl as a prisoner. The residents call for their deaths. The governor but Tyrese and Sasha reject the idea. Beth and Axel bring peace, quickly taking Tyrese and Sasha so Ben and Alan do not fear them. On the way back, Rick and the others push a truck off the road. A walker attacks Glenn, who kills it with a kick. Glenn confronts Rick for not killing the governor, but Maggie calms things down, saying they can deal with it at the prison. In Woodbury, Andrea tells Milton that 9 were injured in the attack. Martinez and other guards shoot residents trying to leave. Andrea tries to calm everyone, but a walker attacks a resident. The governor appears, kills the resident, and goes back inside as if nothing happened. Carl opens the gates when Rick and the others return. Carl is disappointed to learn Daryl left with Merle. At the governor apartment, Andrea asks him to reassure the residents. He says they are at war. Andrea points out Daryl was in Woodbury, and the governor admits he was holding Glenn and Maggie prisoner. She asks why he did not tell her, and he coldly says she is just a visitor. At the prison, Rick ignores Tyrese group. Tyrese tells his group to let Rick talk when he is ready. Beth hands Judith to Rick, but the baby will not calm down in his arms, unsettling him. Andrea and Milton try to calm the panicked residents. Andrea makes a speech promising peace and rebuilding, and the crowd agrees while the governor watches from his window. At the prison, Herschel treats Glenn wounds and notices tension between him and Maggie, encouraging them to open up. Herschel tells Rick that Michonne will not be well enough to travel for a few more days. The group agrees the governor will retaliate, and Carl predicts they will be outnumbered. Rick suggests using reinforcements, referring to Tyrese group. Rick finally approaches Tyrese, who offers to help defend the prison. Rick initially refuses, but is about to reconsider when he sees Lori hallucination on the catwalk. He yells at her to get out, scaring everyone. Tyrese group backs away, and Glenn leads them outside before Rick hurts someone. Rick sees a woman in a wedding dress near the prison graves. When he gets closer, she disappears and reappears outside the fence. He runs to the gate and realizes it is Lori. Michonne watches from a distance, confused, as Rick gestures alone outside the fence. In Woodbury, the governor admires Andrea's speech to the people and tells her to take leadership, saying he is not fit to lead, but she is. Meanwhile, Daryl and Merle argue in the forest. Daryl wants to return to the prison, but Merle believes the governor will never attack them there. Glenn decides to fortify the prison against the governor despite Herschel suggesting they flee. Glenn asks Carl to help investigate where Tyrese group entered. The governor visits Milton and asks if he can still count on his loyalty, requesting that he watch Andrea. Andrea looks for Milton to find out where the governor is, but he dodges her questions, increasing her suspicions. At the prison, Glenn and Carl report the boiler room is full of walkers again. Herschel suggests retreating, but Glenn decides to find the breach with Maggie. Glenn finds Maggie alone and insists on talking about what happened with the governor. She tells the details, but gets upset. Glenn tries to comfort her, but she pushes him away. In the courtyard, Carl and Axel reinforce a fence. Axel says he was jailed for robbing a gas station with a toy gun, and Carl teaches him how to use a real weapon. Merle and Daryl find a Mexican family being attacked by walkers. Daryl helps kill the walkers while Merle watches. After the danger, Merle aims his gun at the father and ransacks their car. Daryl confronts Merle, tells the family to leave, and walks away, leaving Merle alone. Merle follows Daryl and criticizes him for risking his life for strangers. They argue, and Daryl's scars from their abusive father are revealed. Merle apologizes, saying he did not know. Daryl decides to go back where he belongs, but Merle complains he cannot go to the prison because he attacked Glenn and Maggie. Outside the prison, Daryl tries to stop Glenn from leaving alone, warning that his anger could get him killed. Glenn ignores him and leaves. Daryl calls Rick, who is disoriented, saying they need him. Rick confesses he has been seeing Lori, but knows she is not real. In the courtyard, Carl and Axel talk. Suddenly, Axel is shot in the head and dies instantly. The governor, hidden in the tree line, launches an attack. Rick takes cover under a bridge outside the prison. Herschel protects himself near the gates. Michonne hides behind an overturned bus. Carl uses Axel's body as a shield. Beth and Carl hide behind a wall. Maggie comes out armed and fires at the attackers. Suddenly, a truck crashes through the prison gate and stops in the yard. The governor smiles as walkers pour out of the truck. The driver flees, and the governor leaves while the survivors fight the dead. As the governor car drives away, it passes Glenn returning to the prison. Outside the fence, Rick fights for his life, surrounded by walkers. Suddenly, an arrow pierces a walker head. Merle and Daryl have arrived. They eliminate the remaining walkers. Glenn arrives and leads Herschel back to the main group behind the second fence. Momentarily safe, Rick looks grimly at the prison courtyard now full of walkers. The survivors gather in the cell block after the governor attack. Rick and Glenn want to stay and fight him, but Herschel reminds them Axel died and says the only way to keep the group safe is to flee. In the common room, Herschel points out the governor has weapons and enough men to kill them all. Frustrated, Rick tries to leave, but Herschel demands that he step up as leader and do something. Later, Rick observes the walker-infested yard and tells Herschel he will let Herschel and Daryl handle things. In Woodbury, the governor orders residents over 13 to be recruited for battle, forming an army of 35 soldiers. Andrea confronts him about the prison attack. He warns her that if she goes there, she must stay. Andrea discovers the governor is forcing a 14-year-old asthmatic boy to fight and questions Martinez, who says it is the only way to defend the town. At the prison, Rick and the group prepare for battle. Glenn suggests handing Merle over to the governor, but Herschel notes his military experience. Herschel talks to Merle, and the two bond over their amputations and faith. Merle warns that the governor will kill everyone, leaving Rick last to watch his family die. Meanwhile, the governor inspects Woodbury's new army, ignoring Andrea pleas to spare the asthmatic boy. Andrea asks Milton for help escaping to negotiate a truce with Rick. Reluctantly, Milton agrees and leads her through the forest where they meet Tyrese's group. Milton takes Tyrese to Woodbury while Andrea heads to the prison using walkers with bound arms and jaws as bodyguards. Daryl receives her with distrust, questioning her loyalty. Andrea tries to convince the group to negotiate. Herschel doubts the governor wants peace. Michonne says she lived under his influence and reveals he ordered Merle to kill her. Michonne says she returned to Woodbury to expose the governor even knowing it would hurt Andrea. Meanwhile, the governor welcomes Tyrese and convinces him to help fight Rick. Tyrese offers cooperation in exchange for shelter. At the prison, Andrea holds Judith while Daryl encourages her to act against the governor. Carl gives Andrea a car, a gun, and a knife to return to Woodbury. Upon arriving, Andrea tells the governor she visited the prison but claims she went by choice. He embraces her, saying she belongs to Woodbury. That night, Beth sings while the group relaxes in the cell block. Rick plans to get more weapons with Michonne and Carl the next day. He warns Daryl about Merle, saying any trouble will be Merle's responsibility. Meanwhile, Andrea lies beside the sleeping governor, picks up a knife, but hesitates to kill him. She approaches the window still holding the knife, looking outside. Michonne, Rick, and Carl drive down a deserted road. They pass a sign mentioning Stony Mountain and ignore a hitchhiker asking for help. Arriving at a pile of wrecked cars, their vehicle gets stuck in the mud. As they try to free it, walkers surround them, but they manage to eliminate them. Carl shows distrust toward Michonne, but Rick argues they can work together for now. They free the car and continue, leaving the hitchhiker behind. The group reaches Rick's old police station but finds the armory empty. Rick suggests looking for weapons in nearby stores. During the search, they encounter a street full of traps. A masked sniper confronts them, but Carl shoots him down, discovering the man is Morgan, an old acquaintance of Rick. They take him to his apartment where they find stockpiled weapons. While Michonne and Carl collect supplies, Rick recognizes the radio he gave Morgan in the past. Reading the writings on the walls, Rick learns Morgan's son died. Carl finds a map Morgan drew and decides to look for a crib for Judith, leaving with the condition that Michonne accompanies him. Carl tries to shake Michonne off, but she catches up and realizes he is looking for something else before the crib. Meanwhile, Morgan wakes up and attacks Rick with a knife. After a struggle, Rick reminds Morgan who he is and reveals what happened after they separated. Morgan tells how he lost his son by failing to kill his zombie wife. He laments that the weak inherited the earth. Michonne follows Carl to a diner where he searches for a family photo. Michonne helps distract the walkers, but during the escape, Carl drops the photo. Determined, Michonne returns alone and retrieves the photo plus a cat statue she said was very pretty. Carl thanks her, saying he wanted Judith to know her mother face. Rick invites Morgan to join the group at the prison, but he refuses, saying he does not want to see more people die. Morgan warns the group will be destroyed by teeth or bullets. Michonne and Carl return and talk, and Carl apologizes for shooting at Morgan. Rick asks Carl about Michonne, and he says she can be part of the group. Michonne notes Rick also used to talk to the dead. On the way back to the prison, they pass Morgan burying walker bodies. They find the body of the hitchhiker they ignored earlier and stop to grab his backpack. They continue the journey toward the prison. Rick enters a barn at an abandoned feed store while Daryl and Herschel stand guard outside. The governor appears from the shadows and invites Rick to talk. Both leave their weapons on the table but stay alert. Andrea arrives with Milton and Martinez, realizing the meeting started without her. She tries to mediate, but Rick and the governor ignore her. Rick brings up the prison, and the governor makes provocations about past attacks and each group intentions. Outside, Daryl and Martinez fight walkers, competing in skill. At the prison, Glenn organizes the defense and rejects Merle's idea of attacking the governor, fearing it would put Rick, Daryl, and Herschel in danger. In the barn, Rick proposes dividing the territory, but the governor demands total surrender. Andrea leaves the room, and Rick challenges the governor leadership. Rick needles him by mentioning Judith's birth, implying the governor is not a father. Outside, Milton talks to Daryl about amputations while documenting post-apocalyptic events. The governor shares a story about his wife's death, trying to destabilize Rick. At the prison, Merle tries to convince the group to assassinate the governor, but Glenn confronts him, and the fight is interrupted by Beth firing a gun into the ceiling. Andrea asks Daryl about what the governor did to Maggie, and Daryl confirms he is a sick man. Andrea considers staying at the prison, but Daryl warns that would mean choosing a side. The governor offers Rick a deal hand over Michonne in exchange for peace. Rick asks if he can trust the governor and is given 2 days to decide. Meanwhile, Merle tries to convince Michonne to help him on an assassination mission, but she refuses. Maggie and Glenn make peace, leaving their posts to be together. Rick returns to the prison and announces the governor demands, saying they will prepare for war. In Woodbury, the governor instructs Martinez to surround in a plan involving feeding people to walkers. Alan confronts him, and they fight. Sasha begs Tyrese to stop, and he backs down. On the road, Andrea fights walkers in the forest and is chased by the governor. She hides in an abandoned shed. The governor corners her, but Andrea releases a group of walkers against him and escapes. During the night, someone sets fire to the walkers in the pit. Andrea reaches the prison perimeter and calls to the watchtower. Rick hesitates, but the governor shoots her down before she is noticed. In the morning, Martinez finds the burned walkers and suspects Tyrese. The governor lies, saying the walkers were just an intimidation tactic. Martinez apologizes for questioning orders, but gets confused when the governor mentions gasoline. Later, the governor confronts Milton, implying he knows Milton burned the walkers. In the torture room, Andrea is tied up and gagged in the dentist chair with walker chains hanging behind her. Rick tells Daryl about the governor offer. Daryl and Herschel try to convince him not to hand Michonne over, but Rick insists it is the best chance to save lives. He asks Merle for help, and Merle warns the governor will not kill Michonne but torture her instead. Merle suggests using cables to restrain her. Meanwhile, Glenn, Michonne, Beth, and Daryl reinforce the prison gates for the imminent attack, killing walkers at the fence. Returning to the cell block, Michonne reveals the plan to Rick, but Merle starts making his own decisions. Merle finds Michonne in the basement, knocks her out with a phone, and takes her unconscious to the generator room, tying her up. He then drives her down a deserted road, explaining the governor proposal and saying Rick would not have the courage to follow through. Michonne realizes Merle has a conscience and tries to convince him he can still be accepted by the prison group. Moved, Merle cuts Michonne bonds and lets her go, heading alone to face the governor. At the prison, Glenn asks Herschel Blessing to marry Maggie and finds a makeshift engagement ring on a walker. Meanwhile, Merle reaches the governor meeting point, creating a distraction with loud music and walkers to ambush the group. He eliminates several governor soldiers, but a stray shot accidentally kills Ben, Alan's son. The governor men locate Merle and capture him after a fight with a walker. Enraged, the governor brutally beats Merle before executing him. Back at the prison, Rick gathers the group and reveals the governor offer but refuses to hand Michonne over, declaring he will not betray anyone to save others. He watches Michonne return to the prison and smiles, realizing Merle did what he did not have the courage to do. Later, Daryl finds Merle turned into a walker and, crying, kills him repeatedly. Devastated by the loss of his brother and last family tie, the governor attacks Milton brutally for burning the walker pit. Milton asks what Penny would think of her father now. The governor admits she would be afraid, but says if he had been this way from the start, she would still be alive today. Milton asks about Andrea, and the governor takes him to the torture room. The governor orders Milton to gather his tools and kill Andrea. Milton drops a pair of pliers near Andrea's chair while grabbing the tools, giving her a chance to escape. The governor offers a knife to Milton, who pretends to obey but attacks him. The governor disarms him and wounds him badly, saying Milton will die, turn, and devour Andrea. Meanwhile, Rick and the survivors prepare the prison for evacuation. Rick tries to talk to Carl, who ignores him on the catwalk. Rick sees a vision of Lori. Daryl mourns his brother's death, and Carol praises Merle for improving their odds against the governor. In the torture room, the dying Milton tells Andrea he left the pliers to help her escape. He asks her to kill him before he turns. In Woodbury, the governor organizes his soldiers, but Tyrese and Sasha refuse to participate in the attack. They offer to protect the women and children. At the prison, the governor destroys a guard tower and fights walkers in the yard. After eliminating the dead, he enters the cell blocks but finds no survivors. Back in the torture room, Andrea struggles to reach the pliers as Milton turns into a walker. Inside the prison, Rick and the group ambush the governor army, which flees in panic. Elsewhere, the governor loses control and kills his own soldiers when they refuse to keep fighting. Daryl hides among the bodies. Andrea finally frees herself, but is attacked by Walker Milton. She manages to defend herself, but does not escape. On the way back, Rick and the others find Daryl, who describes the governor rampage. Returning to Woodbury, they find Andrea mortally wounded and say goodbye before she dies. Rick brings the remaining Woodbury survivors to the prison. Despite tension with Carl, who disapproves of the decision, Rick believes he did the right thing. Looking at the catwalk, he notices the vision of Lori is gone, confirming his choice to integrate the new members. Thus, the community tries to reorganize and survive the devastation left by the governor. That concludes the third season of The Walking Dead, a horror and drama series from 2010.